Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Americas, that is North and South America, before they came into contact with European societies. Here are the goals for the video. I would suggest to you guys that you write these questions down, and as you watch my video, try and produce the answers to these questions. These are the main ideas that I want you to get out of the video and the things that will most likely pop up on your test. So if you can understand the answers to all of these questions at the end of this video, then you are on the right track. Okay, so let's get started by talking about how human beings actually ended up in America in the first place. So what happened is hunter-gatherers actually crossed over into North America from Russia around 14,000 years ago. That is 12,000 BC. And you might ask, well, how is this possible? Because there's water between Alaska and Russia. And you're right. There is water between Russia and Alaska now, but in 12,000 BC, there was not, because we were going through an ice age. And when ice ages occur, water in the ocean gets sucked up onto land in the form of glaciers, which lowers the sea level and allows land bridges to form. And so what this means is that humans over in Eurasia were able to migrate into Alaska just simply by walking. And some people think that humans were actually walking these long distances because they were hunting animals that were migrating back and forth. So that's how humans actually enter into North America. But in a very reasonable manner, they spread south quickly because it's probably really, really cold in Alaska in the middle of an ice age. So in the next 2,000 years, human beings spread southward and populate most of North and South America. While they're doing this, they possess Stone Age technology. That is, the only tools that they are making are made out of wood and stone and bone and other simple animal natural products. And even though they populate the entire two continents, their population density remains relatively low, and there are only about 10 million humans in both continents combined. Just to put that in perspective, there are almost 10 million people living just in New York City today. So even though they take up a lot of space, there are not really very many of them there. So the next key step in American civilization, just like in Eurasia, is the development of agriculture. And this is where they domesticate species of plants and animals and start using them for human gain. They get started pretty late, probably no earlier than 7,500 BC, and it doesn't really catch on in a widespread way until around 5,000 BC. There are a couple different places where agriculture develops, and the key crops in these places are in Mexico, corn, beans, squash, peppers, and turkeys, and in Peru, corn, beans, squash, potato, llamas, and guinea pigs. It's important to note that these guys don't have any horses, cows, or sheep. They also don't have any camels or anything. They don't really have any big domesticated animals at all. The biggest animal that they do have is the llama, and that's confined to the mountains in South America, and you can't really ride a llama, so it's not really good for the same things as horses are. This agriculture develops in Mexico and Peru, and then spreads north pretty slowly into North America. So let's look at Native American civilizations. Just as in Eurasia, the discovery of agriculture leads eventually to the development of complex, stratified, and urban civilizations. Yeah, so that bullet point there is basically what I just said. Populations begin to grow. You get complex hierarchies with rulers and priests on top, warriors in the middle, and farmers on the bottom. And you also start to see technological development. As people gather together and society becomes more complex, new ideas turn into new technologies. The three main civilizations we see in the Americas are the Maya, who are the earliest civilization we're going to look at, and then the Aztec and the Inca that are both around at the time of European contact. Mayan civilization. So the Mayan civilization occupied the Yucatan Peninsula in what is today Mexico. So if you look down at the bottom right hand of the screen, you can see the Yucatan Peninsula. This is a very flat area that is mostly jungle, but in the middle of this dense jungle, the Maya were able to carve out an advanced civilization, which lasted for a long time, from 250 AD to 900 AD. So the basis of their civilization was agriculture, and the main thing they grew was corn. And the development of really productive corn agriculture allows them to build big cities. And you see the development of city-states in the Yucatan Peninsula. And this is very similar to the development of city-states in ancient Mesopotamia, right? You see these little independent islands of civilization, except here, instead of being isolated by desert, as in Mesopotamia, the city-states are isolated from each other by very dense tropical forest. The Maya develop a number of important technologies. They have a very advanced writing system, which we actually have interpreted and can now read Mayan texts. And they also developed advanced systems of astronomy and calendars. And so they were watching the moon and the sun and the stars and using these to calculate the passage of time. Their writing system was hieroglyphic in nature, very similar to early Egyptian writing. And even though they developed these very advanced technologies, they suddenly collapse around the year 900. And nobody knows exactly what the major cause of this was, but most people think that it's some kind of environmental collapse. Either they clear too much rainforest, or they run out of fresh water, or their population simply becomes too high and they run out of resources. But anyway, around 900, this high civilization disappears and the jungle swallows up all of the Mayan cities. We see the emergence of another civilization pretty close to where the Mayan had been. And this one is known as the Aztec civilization, aka the Aztec Empire. And it starts up in central Mexico. And their capital city is actually where Mexico City is today. The basis of the Aztec civilization was also agriculture. And they actually developed a system for growing crops in the middle of lakes. And so they're able to pile up huge piles of very productive mud from the bottom of lakes into man-made islands, and then they grow crops on these islands. And this system is so productive that they're able to support huge cities. On top of this, they also gain resources from fighting wars. So the Aztecs are a very militant people, and they fight wars with their neighbors. And just as you might remember from earlier, the steps to building an empire are 1, conquer your neighbors, 2, take stuff, and 3, use that stuff to make your empire even more powerful. And this is exactly what the Aztecs do. So they go out, they conquer their neighbors, and they bring back tribute to their own territory to make themselves richer and more powerful. Their capital city was known as Tenochtitlan, and this was a huge city with thousands and thousands of people living there. And they were supported, as I said, using these very fertile islands that they would build. And Tenochtitlan was actually in the middle of a lake, so they were surrounded by these man-made islands that they could use to support themselves. One very interesting aspect of the Aztec Empire is human sacrifice was central to their culture. And they believed that the gods demanded human sacrifice in order to continue to bestow their blessings upon the earth. And so one of the things that they would capture when they went out and conquered territory was not only gold and other good stuff, but humans. And the humans would be brought back to the Aztec cities and they're sacrificed in huge numbers, sometimes thousands in a single day, for the glory of the Aztec gods. Obviously, this makes the Aztecs quite unpopular among their neighbors, and when the Spanish show up later, the Aztecs' neighbors are pretty quick to turn on them and work with the Spanish to overthrow the Aztec Empire. The last major civilization we're going to be looking at is the Incan Empire, and this is established in western South America, mostly along the spine of the Andes Mountains, which runs along that coast. And this empire is mostly set up in the mountains, and like the Aztecs, they conquer neighboring tribes. And so, just like the Aztecs, this makes the Inca quite unpopular with the other groups in the area. The king of the Incan Empire was viewed as a god. He was actually seen as a sun god and worshipped as such. So he had absolute authority over people in his territory. The Incan Empire was pretty advanced in a couple of ways. They were very good builders. They actually would reshape whole mountainsides using terraces so they could have flat places to farm and to build. And they also built incredible roads that connected this long empire all the way from the north to the south, thousands of miles. And if you go to South America today, you can actually still walk along some of the roads they've built, similar to the roads built by the Roman Empire earlier in world history. They were also one of the most advanced civilizations in the Americas for their use of metals. Basically, the Inca were the only civilization to make widespread use of bronze tools. Everybody else had learned how to melt down and work with gold and silver, but they were still taking their first baby steps towards using bronze. And in this way, they were really, really far behind Eurasian civilizations. And we should also talk a little bit about the Native Americans who lived in North America. Generally, North America was pretty far behind Mexico and South America, and the reason for this is that they only slowly got agriculture from the south. And so as corn spreads north, you start to see the beginning of North American civilizations. You see Pueblo Indians in the deserts of the southwest, and they start to set up irrigation systems, similar in a lot of ways to the irrigation systems of Egypt and Mesopotamia. In the middle of North America, you see a civilization known as the Mississippian culture, and these guys begin to build huge earthen pyramids from the years 800 to 1500, and you see the very first steps of an advanced civilization in North America. But it doesn't get very far, and it eventually collapses even before Europeans set foot in their territory. And on the East Coast, you see small communities. You don't even see the beginning of urban civilization. And these people there do some farming. They raise some corn and other stuff. But they also remain hunter-gatherers. And so they combine aspects of agriculture and hunter-gatherer lifestyle to support their population, which remains very small. Look at, I've titled the slide Technological Delay. And basically it shows you how far behind the Americas were from Eurasia. And so agriculture, which is kind of the foundation for civilization and therefore technological advancement, begins in Eurasia around 10,000 BC. But it's not discovered in America until 7,500 BC. So there's about a 2,500 year delay between Eurasia and America. Writing, which is also a very crucial technology for civilization and for further technological development, is discovered in Eurasia around 3,600 BC, but not in America until 1,000 BC. So America is about 2,000 years behind on this technology. So actually they've closed the gap a little bit that they started with from agriculture. But one huge difference is the delay in bronze metalworking. In Eurasia, this technology is discovered in 4,500 BC, but not discovered in America until 1,200 AD. So the Americas are about 5,000 years behind in terms of figuring out how to make metals. And this is huge because without metals, you can't build stuff as well, you can't farm as well, and you can't fight as well. So this is a huge disadvantage that America is facing. Iron metalworking is developed around 1500 BC, and this is crucial in the same way as bronze, except iron is cheaper to make and stronger. In America, this is never discovered. The American civilizations are wiped out by Europeans before they ever discover iron. And gunpowder, likewise. Gunpowder is discovered in China around 800 AD, but it is never discovered in America. And so when European conquerors come over with all of their fancy technology, including steel swords and gunpowder, the Americans are at a huge disadvantage and are conquered fairly quickly by Europeans. Why does this happen? Well, there are a couple reasons. One, the most obvious one, is there's just the late start, that even if America had developed as quickly as Eurasia, they would be 2,500 years behind. So to put that in perspective, if we had never made contact, Europe would still be doing its thing and probably have gone to space and stuff like that, whereas America would probably be around the developmental level of the Greek city-states, or perhaps the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. But there are some other things that also held the Americas back. These main things are geographical disadvantages. One is that the civilizations in America were highly isolated from one another. There are huge mountain ranges and jungles that prevented the different civilizations in America from talking to one another and trading with one another. And trade is one of the main ways that ideas are transferred between civilizations. And because there wasn't this trade, the different good ideas from the Mayan and the Aztec and the Incan civilizations never got exchanged. Also, there were no big domestic animals in the Americas. There were no horses, cows, or camels, and this made it harder to do agriculture because you couldn't use horses to pull plows. And it also made it harder to trade because if you don't have horses and cows and camels to pull carts and to ride on, that means you have to have human beings carrying stuff on their backs. And that is extremely inefficient, and so this limited trade and also limited the exchange of resources and ideas, which held back the development of the American civilizations. So that helps to explain why Spain was able to take over huge chunks of America relatively easily. Thanks for hanging with me. Here are your questions. See you tomorrow.